The second month of the Cold War with Michael. He began to make a big fuss about a young girl. Everyone expected me to be jealous and quarrelsome as before. Michael was no exception. But I didn't. I even gave him my blessing. On the day I moved out, he stopped me. "Why aren't you jealous this time?" I looked at him calmly. "It's quite pointless. Amanda, don't play it safe, it's not going to end." A long time later, late at night, Michael called in an awkward manner. "It's all over. Do you want to get back together?" I looked at the man beside me, who was full of resentment for having his rhythm interrupted. "I'm sorry, I've just had a conversation, I have to be responsible for others." I talked to Michael for 6 years. From senior year of high school, to college graduation. He originally said he would marry me as soon as I graduated. But I didn't even wait for a proposal. The year I graduated, he was having an affair with a schoolmate. That was the first time I caught him cheating on me, and I almost broke down and made a lot of noise. We argued so much that we smashed everything in the house. Later, he apologized, and the schoolgirl completely cut off. I couldn't let go of several years of feelings, and chose to forgive. But I didn't realize that this was just the beginning. Just today, the second month of our Cold War. Michael suddenly sent a message in a group of mutual friends. "I want to marry her." The group instantly exploded. "You should have gotten married a long time ago. It's been 6 years and you still haven't gotten married. You're such a scum." "Yes, Amanda is so pretty. Do you want to turn her into a yellow face?" "Michael, what are you thinking? I'm not talking about her. You've all seen that girl before. She's very clean and simple." The group was suddenly quiet. And the phrase "especially clean and simple" was like a sharp knife. Like a sharp knife, it suddenly poked into my heart. I knew he wasn't talking about me. The other day, I heard he was chasing a college girl. He even took her to Los Angeles and took a group of pictures of her in a literary setting. When I first found out, it was really hard. But when I saw those photos, I was suddenly relieved. I'd been talking to Michael for 3 years, wanting to go to Los Angeles and Hawaii with him. I didn't get to do what I wanted. He said the company was too busy and told me to go with my girlfriends. But now there is time for a full 7 days with someone. No one in the group said anything, so I thought about it and replied a few words back. "It's pretty, it goes well with you. Congratulations." Sent it and just backed out of Facebook. I drove back to Michael's place. I had some personal belongings sitting in his house. It wouldn't be right if I didn't take them away. There were still a lot of my clothes in the check room. I only took one of my favorite new dresses. I've had it for 6 months now, and I've always wanted to save it for when I traveled with him. But I neglected to realize that this was the best season to wear it. When I dragged my suitcase away, Michael and the girl came back just in time. The little girl looked at me with curiosity in her eyes. Michael told her to go in first, but came over and stopped me. "Why aren't you jealous this time?" I smiled. "It's quite pointless, splitting up and bickering, it's tiring." "You've learned something, Amanda. You know it's useless to argue, so you're backing off?" I looked at him calmly. "Michael, it's been 6 years, you know my nature." "Amanda," Michael said with a hint of cynicism in his voice, "don't get carried away and end up in a mess. Aren't you afraid I'll marry her?" I pushed his hand away. "I'm leaving." Michael didn't stop me again. I knew he was sure I couldn't leave him. 6 years ago, I was almost assaulted on my way home from study hall. It was Michael who came to my rescue. For a whole year after that, I resisted all the opposite sex except him. Even an unintentional touch would make me vomit. To this day, those symptoms have not completely disappeared from my body. Couldn't even make it to the last step with Michael. Let alone, have an intimate relationship with a man other than him. So he was emboldened. So all these years went by, and what started out as pity and heartache. In the end, it's turned into a comfortable sense of wrongdoing and hurt. He does not want to marry me, in fact, because I am not clean and simple, right? I sent a friend post. "Got a travel ride? Going to Los Angeles, leaving now." There were quite a lot of replies. But not a single one who said they could go. My best friend called me and wailed. "Bow bow, I have to go on a business trip tomorrow, I can't go with you, there's no freedom for a laborer. Let's wait for your vacation and then we'll go together. Is it really okay for you to be alone? And what's going on with you and Michael this time?" They broke up. Really? Truer than gold. A new Facebook post came in, and I clicked on it while chatting with my girlfriends. It was from a neighbor's brother, Alexander, who I hadn't talked to in a while. "Amanda, I'm in Los Angeles." I was suddenly in a trance. In front of my eyes slowly floated a clear and elegant figure. It was Alexander who carried me through the long alley when I was a teenager. When I arrived in Los Angeles, it was already 9 p.m. Alexander's secretary was sent to pick me up because he had a business engagement that was not yet over. When the car arrived at the hotel downstairs, I saw him at once, followed by a group of leaders. They were all older than him, and all had a respectful attitude. He is only in his 30s now, but he already has real power in his hands. He is a rising star in the capital's top circles. Alexander's grandmother's family and my family are neighbors. Once upon a time, he came back to visit grandma during the summer and winter vacations, and I followed him like a little tail all day long. When I got tired of playing, he would always carry me home on his back. When the adults teased me, I even foolishly said, "Brother Alexander is so pretty, I'll be his bride when I grow up." When I had an accident in high school, he came back from the capital to see me. But by then, I wouldn't even let him touch me. After that, we slowly broke off contact. Until 3 years ago, Michael's company was in trouble. When I had no other choice, I thought of Alexander. I contacted him and asked for his help. After that, I got his Facebook page, but I never talked to him. I stood by the car and watched him entertain the leaders and elders. In the flattery, he was always calm, showing no emotion. But occasionally cast a glance. But still as young as calm and gentle. I slowly lowered my eyes, staring at my own colorful flying skirt. Inexplicably lost in thought. Until Alexander walked up to me and stood still. And, "Long time no see." His voice was deep, as if the night breeze was brushing past. I abruptly raised my head and saw the tiny shimmering light of the starry sky reflected in the bottom of his deep eyes. A glittering brightness. There are some things that happen that are watertight and yet known to each other. It's just that I'm surprised. I didn't seem to resist Alexander as much as I thought I would. Resisted his kisses and touches. The hotel room had a huge terrace. The top floor, the highest place, as if easily touched the silver disk like the moon. There were no lights on, yet it was still in full view. Alexander's kisses landed on my brow and worked their way back down. Until, finally, my fingers dug into his thick, ebony hair. Knuckles pressed green and white, whimpering to stop him from continuing. "Alexander, don't touch here. It's dirty, it's really dirty." Dirty in a way that Michael wouldn't want to touch. The nightmare of the old days came back to life. That stinky man, covering my mouth and nose, yanking me roughly by my hair. Dragging me into that cul-de-sac. He pulled down his pants and held me down on the sewage-strewn ground. Almost, just a little bit, my life would have been completely ruined. It was Michael who showed up just in time to save me. It was also him when my parents gave up on me. He stood by my side and said he would always be there for me. So these 6 years, he hurt me once and for all, but I still chose to forgive. Until this time, he said. "That girl's special clean." Alexander hugged me, softly soothing, patiently coaxing. My body from taut as a stone, then later slowly loosened. "Brother Alexander." I wanted to try. I wanted to try and see if I could. But, it still doesn't seem to work. I smiled at Alexander, but tears fell from my eyes. "It's a bummer, isn't it?" Alexander's expression grew serious. "Amanda, listen to me." He cupped my face. "It's not your fault. It's not you that's dirty either, it's the heart, it's prejudice. I understand the reasoning, but it's really hard. The human heart is inherently biased, so prejudice can never be eliminated. And then, do you believe me? Brother Alexander? Close your eyes, don't think about anything, just leave it all to me, okay? Just like when you were little, I carried you across the river. I carried you across the street and up the hill on my back. Every time, you'd lie on my back with your eyes closed, obediently saying that you trusted me and wouldn't let you fall off." He stroked the top of my hair, and soft kisses fell in a lingering stream. My body sinks into the soft bed. Tight muscles slowly relaxing and soothing under his kisses. Until finally, the kisses landed there. Like a piece of land that has been dry for many years and has cracked. Suddenly from the depths of the center of the earth seeped out a cool spring. The soil, that was as dry as fragments, gradually moistened. In the end, the spring watered the land through. It was the resurrection of the dead. It was hope that was about to break through. I scratched Alexander's shoulders and back with impatience. A trail of blood mottled his firm muscles. When I was a kid, I always yelled that I was going to be my bride. Alexander brushes the wet hair from my forehead, his voice dark. How come now that you're older, it doesn't count? On the 5th day in Los Angeles, Michael had called me once. I didn't answer, and he didn't call again. Michael proposed to the girl. He made a big deal out of it. He wanted to tell the whole world. I got a lot of calls and messages. A few were from my mom. Amanda, Michael doesn't want you either. What are you going to do? Why don't you marry your cousin's family? It's far away, and no one will know about your scandalous past. There was another one from Michael. Amanda, when will you come back from Los Angeles? I'll send you a wedding invitation. I didn't even reply. I just looked at Alexander, who was concentrating on his business not far away. I slowly made up my mind. He has a bright future and a prosperous official career. He really shouldn't have anything to do with me. Even if that is not my fault. But the world will use this stain to attack him, to hurt him. I don't want him to be treated like this. Michael leaned back on the couch. The girl in front of him was crying into tears, but he was half-hearted. You just proposed to me 3 days ago, why the sudden breakup now? Is it because of your ex-girlfriend? She is so dirty woman, what is there to let go? Ah. Before the girl could finish her sentence, she suddenly held her head and screamed. The sound of a glass shattering piercingly rang out. The glass shards cut her face and the back of her hand, and blood immediately gushed out. Michael, however, still felt the rage. He kicked the coffee table in front of him. Who the fuck are you to talk about her? The girl cried out in fear and argued. You said it, you drunkenly said it yourself. You said she was violated, it didn't go in, but it was dirty, and made you sick. Shut the fuck up. Michael raised his hand and slapped the girl hard across the face. Shijo, don't make a big deal. Friends rushed up to persuade. You and Amanda, after all, so many years of feelings, if you still think of her in your heart, just bow your head and serve us soft. These words are indeed a bit too much. Amanda is innocent, she is the victim. Michael sneered and shook off his friend's hand. Too much? She's a victim, yes, but what part of what I said wasn't true? If I hadn't saved her and wanted her, what man under the sun would marry a woman like her? Who is she to be angry with me? She's been gone for so many days, she's got a lot of backbone. Michael smiled even colder. I'll watch her do it, she'd better not come back to beg me. During the last 2 days in Los Angeles, Alexander put off the rest of his official business. He accompanied me to many places. He bought me many beautiful dresses. He took photos for me as I requested. At first, his photo-taking skills were really bad. Maybe it was because of the height difference, I was always photographed as a 50-50 dwarf by him. But after I got mad at him twice, he was able to take beautiful pictures of me. So you see, the difference between paying attention and not paying attention. Michael rarely takes my pictures. The few that he does take occasionally of me are oddly shaped. We seldom go out together. Once upon a time, every time I thought about it, I was more or less always a little sad. But in the end, I got myself together. What more could one ask for? When the whole world thought I was dirty, it was Michael who stood firmly by my side. I shouldn't have been so greedy as to expect that he would remain the same for the rest of his life. In fact, I can understand what he's thinking right now. After all, nowadays Michael has a successful career. Long ago, not when the parents' relationship breaks down, and even he is no longer favored that problematic teenager. I seem to have completely let go. I've decided to let it go. The night before we left Los Angeles, Alexander and I were both drunk. It was the same room. The moon hanging just out of reach on the rooftop. Alexander carried me to bed. There were no lights on in the room, only the silver moonlight that covered half the room. I closed my eyes as he kissed me. It was like going back to that time when I was young and carefree. I spent the whole day at Alexander's side, always on his back when I was tired. As I grew older, my teenage heart was always filled with him as well. Then he went to high school, college, and spent more and more time away from me. And then came the accident. I couldn't help but wonder in a trance. If it hadn't been for that accident, would I have married Alexander as a matter of course? Anon. Alexander's arms were propped up on my side, a faint layer of lust already tinting the bottom of his eyes. "If you don't feel well, just tell me." The silver moonlight suddenly shattered. I abruptly grabbed Alexander's arm, my fingertips sinking deep into taut muscles. The nightmarish images invaded my brain once again. My body subconsciously was about to go cold and tense when, Alexander suddenly gripped my hand tightly and interlocked his fingers with mine. "Don't close your eyes, Anne. Look closely, it's me, I'm Alexander." I slowly opened my eyes, and Alexander's clear, handsome face was reflected in my vision. His expression was restrained and pained, but his voice was gentle and firm. The dirty, ugly images in my mind seemed to shatter suddenly. He lowered his head and kissed me on my cold lips, and then, "Don't be afraid. Don't even be afraid anymore in the future." But tears slowly gathered in my eyes. And from the end of the eyes overflowed, slowly bled into the temples. "It's Alexander. I'm not afraid anymore, but, I hurt so much." He clasped my hand and kissed me a little more gently. "Then I'll go out." "Don't." I tightened my grip on his long, slender fingers, firmly embedding them in my knuckles. "Brother Alexander, kiss me again." "Good." We were both exhausted that night. Alexander was always worried about me and accommodating. It was especially hard to endure. After all, he was always looking out for my feelings. I woke up earlier than Alexander. At that time, the sky is not yet completely bright. By the light of the morning, I looked at Alexander. He has been a steady man since he was a child. Now that he is in a high position, he is even more composed than ordinary people. Even sleeping is very disciplined. I, on the other hand, squeezed him onto the edge of the bed in the middle of the night last night. When I woke up, one leg was still pressed on his belly. And his hand was holding my foot. I've always been cold, even in the heat of summer. Sleeping in the middle of the night will also have cold hands and feet. I didn't wake him up, and very gently got up and got out of bed. And then, perhaps because his palm fell, Alexander dreamily called out my name in deep sleep. I was busy kissing him gently. "I'm going to the restroom, you continue to sleep." Alexander opened his eyes and looked at me sleepily. He soon fell back into a deep sleep. I went to the bathroom and simply took a shower and changed my clothes. I didn't blow dry my hair for fear of waking him up. Carried the suitcase and walked out of the room. When I closed the door, I couldn't help but look back again. Alexander knew nothing and was sleeping heavily. The deepest part of my heart stung inexplicably. As sourness welled up in my nose, I ruthlessly closed the door. I didn't go back to the capital and bought another random plane ticket to another city. Alexander's number is blocked for me. On Facebook I left him a message. Said I wanted to walk around a bit and told him not to worry about me or look for me. Shortly after arriving at the airport, I suddenly heard my name ring out on the radio. It was Alexander looking for me. I sat down in a chair, and before the tears fell, I put on my mask and hat, go through security, and go to the gate. The announcement was repeated several times. But I stayed strong and didn't look back. Alexander didn't know which flight I'd be taking, which city I'd be going to. Not to mention that one person is deliberately avoiding another. It was like looking for a needle in a haystack. On the airplane until almost takeoff. I took off my mask and sunglasses. There were many messages on my cell phone, all from Alexander. I never replied. He finally sent a few more. "Anyway, be safe out there by yourself. If anything happens, feel free to call me. And I'll be waiting for you in New York." I turned off my cell phone and put my sunglasses back on. I didn't let the unfamiliar travelers around me see my tears. It was half a month after I returned to New York. My friends knew I was back and asked me to dinner. But in the middle of the meal, Michael suddenly showed up uninvited. He didn't say a word when he arrived. He didn't even touch the new tableware that the waiter brought. He just sat on the sofa and looked as if someone owed him money. The atmosphere suddenly became awkward. Everyone stopped eating, looked at me, and at Michael. It grew quiet. I put down my spoon and looked at the crowd and smiled. "Why don't you say anything?" And we're all almost done eating. "I have something to do too, I have to go first." The friends got up, and one by one, they all wanted to leave. "What, you guys invited me to dinner and gave me a treat, now what do you mean you're leaving me behind?" I pretended to be angry. My friends were too embarrassed to say they were leaving again. Michael suddenly laughed. He looked at me. Good for you, Amanda, you've grown a lot in temper after a few days. Just say what you want to say, no need to be so gloomy. Michael's face suddenly sank. Some of my friends, who could see what was going on, hurriedly made amends. Let's be calm and talk nicely. You two have been talking for so many years, what can't we talk about? Yes, Shijo, if you want to make up with Amanda, don't be so formal. Who the hell wants to make up with her? Michael suddenly stood up. How can you say that, Shijo? Yeah, it's not like Amanda offended you. But I wasn't half angry. It was as if many things didn't matter after I completely let go. His words couldn't hurt me anymore. I have something for you today. Michael took an invitation from somewhere and threw it to me. I told you before, I'll send you a wedding invitation when you come back. Remember to come and drink the wedding wine. Michael got up and left. My friends were baffled. What kind of wedding drink is this, Shijo? Didn't you two break up? Yes, we broke up half a year ago. Yes, it's been half a month since we broke up. It's a breakup, but we're still not happy to get back together. Michael laughed with a wry smile. Have you guys ever been in love without any breakups? Congratulations. I held the invitation and smiled a particularly sincere smile. I'll definitely be there. I raised the invitation. I'm really happy for you. The smile on Michael's face cooled a little. Amanda, when did you learn to say what you mean? After saying that, he didn't wait for me to open my mouth. He sneered again, just keep talking tough, don't regret it. Michael slammed the door and left. My friends were pretty over it. But I didn't let it affect my mood. After dinner, I invited everyone to sing. But just as I walked out of the restaurant, I met Alexander and his entourage. He was dressed in his official clothes, and looked quite unapproachable. He didn't look like the same person as when he was with me in Los Angeles. The moment I saw him, a lot of strange and bizarre things popped into my head. Who would have thought that Alexander, who is so serious and ascetic now? When he's in bed, he's so gentle and coaxing. The contrast between a self-restrained and respectful superior who is privately addicted to the female sex and sinks into lust is really on display in him. He really shows it to the fullest. My brain must have been spoiled by reading this kind of novel. My face was already burning when Alexander looked over. He said something to the people around him. Then he left behind the group of big men who all looked like they were from extraordinary places and walked straight over to me. I could only greet him stiffly. Brother Alexander. Alexander glanced at a few friends around me. With a gentle voice, he inquired, having dinner with friends? Going back? We're going to sing. Alexander nodded, but then asked, where? I could only give the name of the club. Go, be safe and don't drink too much. Alexander finished his speech and nodded to some of his friends. Then he turned around and left. I couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. With a status like his, it's not appropriate to go to an entertainment place. So it should just be a matter of asking. When Alexander walked away, the friend beside me was curious and asked, "And who was that big guy just now? He looks quite gentlemanly, but his aura is so big that I dare not speak. I don't even dare to speak. He's a brother I used to know from my hometown. I haven't seen him for a long time. Let's hurry up and go. Alexander has a special identity, and I don't want to cause him any trouble. After all, I've troubled Michael once before when his business was in trouble." It was getting a little late by the time we got out after the sing-along. We all drank a little wine. We are ready to call the car back. But just as I reached the curb, a black car parked not far away suddenly flashed its lights. Then the window came down halfway, revealing Alexander's slightly weary face. I froze for a moment and stood there without moving. Alexander, however, had already called my name and, "Come here." I could only greet my friend first and walked over to Alexander's car. "Get in, I'll take you back." "Brother Alexander, I called a car." "It's too late, it's not safe." Alexander looked at me with very light red blood under his eyes. The smell of alcohol on his body was also very strong. It was a little hard for me to imagine how long he had waited here after socializing. "Don't worry, just dropping you off." Alexander seemed to laugh softly, and I always keep my word. I couldn't say anything to refuse, so I could only get into the car. As expected, Alexander didn't bother me on the way. He seemed to be having a hard time being drunk, His eyes were closed and his eyebrows were furrowed. The driver drove the car as smoothly as possible. But in the middle, Alexander still got out of the car and vomited once. Mr. Pei has a bad stomach and has had a lot of socializing for a while. He's not usually like this, and not many people dare to persuade him to drink. But during this time, Mr. Pei almost always comes to. Okay. Alexander staggered to his feet and glanced at the driver. His voice was calm, but not angry. Nonsense, those social functions are unavoidable. The driver didn't dare to say more. But I vaguely guessed that it should have something to do with me. Alexander is a man of his word. Until the car stopped under my house. He never mentioned anything about Los Angeles. Only when I got out of the car, Alexander called me gently. "Enan." I subconsciously turned around. In the dim line of sight, Alexander leaned against the car seat, his gaze as calm as the sea. Deep, calm, yet harboring darkness. I hurriedly averted my eyes. "Brother Alexander, you should also go back to rest early. In the future, drink less." Alexander smiled at me. "It's only occasionally that I drink more when I'm in a bad mood. Don't worry, I will drink less in the future." "Okay, I'm going up." "Go ahead, I'll leave when you get home." I got out of the car and whispered goodbye to him. Then I turned around and headed upstairs. I didn't look back, but it was as if I could sense it too. Alexander's eyes were on me the whole time. It wasn't until I got into the elevator that I leaned against the wall and let out a slow breath. Several strings of southern red beads were wrapped around my left wrist. And underneath the beads were misshapen and mottled old bruises. It had long since scabbed over and healed, a long, long time in the past. But at this moment, it was suddenly vaguely painful. I resigned from Michael's company before going out on the trip. When I came back, I found a new job without any problem. The new company has a good working environment and the coworkers are very nice to work with. It took me almost a week to get used to it. When my work life was gradually getting on track, I suddenly received an anonymous letter. Inside the letter, there was only a blurry and gloomy photo. The person in the photo was me who was almost violated that night 6 years ago. Undressed, nearly naked, with an extremely fearful and hideous face. After only one look, I immediately snapped the photo on the table. Turning around, I rushed to the restroom and vomited my heart out. My coworkers were shocked by my reaction. Someone came over and knocked on the door, anxiously calling my name. But it was like I couldn't hear anything. The sky was spinning in front of my eyes. All that floated was that night, all the unpleasantness. It's been 6 years. Why did the man who did the wrong thing back then suddenly reappear? "Amanda, are you okay? You scared me to death just now." I walked out of the restroom with a pale face and barely smiled at my coworkers. "I'm fine, I might have eaten a bad meal. But now I was in such a state that I obviously couldn't work anymore. My manager gave me a day off and told me to go to the hospital. I packed up my things and put the photos away carefully. I was just walking downstairs when I saw Michael. He looked unusually serious, yet as if he was forcibly suppressing his anger. When he saw me, he immediately walked over quickly. "Amanda, are you okay?" Michael grabbed my arm. "You look terrible." I got the picture. "Michael, it's from the other night, I was photographed." I said mechanically. The sun was blinding, but I was cold all over. I don't know how many pictures that person took, or maybe there's a video. If it leaked out. I don't have the courage to face the eyes of the world. And then there's conservative and feudal mom and dad, who value fame above all else. They'd never be able to accept another incident like this. "Amanda." Michael's face was incredibly dark. I got it too. And there was a blackmail letter. I started shaking uncontrollably all over. "Michael, call the police." I didn't catch him back when the surveillance there was broken, but now the technology is more advanced, so I'm sure we can catch him. "Amanda, calm down." "I can't calm down, Michael, I'm calling the police." He sent the photos to who knows how many people. Tears welled up in my eyes. Maybe now, everyone in the world has seen those pictures. "No, Amanda, I checked. You and I are the only ones who got them. No one else got them. They only want money. They only want $2 million, and they'll destroy all the photos and videos if they pay. Auntie and uncle are getting old, they can't handle it. It's only $2 million, Amanda, I'll pay him, I'll settle this, I promise, that's all, okay?" Michael gently hugged me, his voice softly coaxing. "Amanda, trust me, okay? But I still pushed him away. We've broken up. And you're getting married. You're not obligated to help me with these things anymore. I won't give him $2 million. I'll call the police. I raised my hand to wipe away my tears and took my cell phone to call the police. But Michael stopped me again. Amanda, it's not easy to calm down your life. You haven't needed a psychiatrist for the past 2 years. I don't want you to get caught up in public opinion again. You can't handle it. He clutched my hand and flicked the string of beads away. Look at your wrist, Amanda, you're not always so lucky to be rescued. Consider the money alone. You can pay me back when you have money in the future. I saved you 6 years ago, now I have to take care of your business. Michael, I'm grateful to you for staying with me all these years and helping me out, really. Amanda, you don't have to thank me. Actually, you know, I've never loved anyone else. Michael cupped my face, his tone had a rare seriousness. Amanda, let's make up. After so many years of relationship, I can't let go. You can't let go either, can you? I didn't say yes to Michael's request to make up. But he didn't force me either. It was as if the photos had never happened. Everything was calm again. Only when my mind had just calmed down a bit. Mom and Dad suddenly called me. Amanda, you have to get married now, no more delay. Why? Why do you think? Your brother's girlfriend is going to blow it because of you. People dislike your brother for having a sister like you. They're even more worried that you won't be able to get married, and you'll be a burden to them. Amanda, it's not that we don't love you, but your brother is the only one in our family. If he doesn't get married, I won't be able to face my ancestors. What's it to him if I don't get married? And all these years, have I ever spent a dime of our money? Why am I a burden to him? I was shaking with anger, and my voice was shaking out of control. You're not spending money now, but what about when you're old? You don't have a husband or children, who's going to pay for your old age? You'll still have to rely on your brother and sister-in-law. Isn't that a burden? You've been with Michael for so many years and you couldn't get him to marry you. You're a failure, Amanda. Since Michael won't marry you, you can marry someone else. I'll finalize your marriage in 2 days. I won't marry. If you don't marry, you'll have to. If you keep on delaying your brother's marriage, I'll hang myself in front of your door. The phone hung up viciously. I don't know how I managed to hold myself back from crying. I sat alone in my room for the whole afternoon. There was still a message in my cell phone's Facebook page from Michael a few days ago. He said I could reach out to him anytime I thought about getting back together. Marrying him seems to be the most suitable path in front of me now. He had been the salvation of my youth. We were together for 6 whole years. He knows and understands all my vulnerabilities and fragilities. It was as if there could never be another person under the sun who was more suitable for marriage than him. But my heart told me, I don't want to. At the time, he recklessly said that the girl is very clean and simple. The heart that once loved him and relied on him wholeheartedly. It's already completely dead. What's more, my girlfriend told me. Michael's side of the woman has not been broken. He wants to get back together with me, but at the same time, he and his new secretary, ambiguous unclear. If it was before, I would be miserable. But now, there are no more waves in my heart. At night, I went to the river alone. In fact, I didn't want to kill myself. I did in the 2 years after the accident. But then I figured it out. I'm not wrong, why should I die? Wrong that person, why is now still alive and well? Also got so much money. Want to call the police thought, once again emerged. But if the police, will the devil be enraged and simply release all the photos to the public? At that time I would again become the sinner of the entire Tsin family. I stood at the riverside in a daze, standing motionless for a long time. I didn't realize that my behavior had already attracted the attention of passers-by. When the police arrived, I was embarrassed and guilty. I was very upset that I had taken up public resources. Was constantly bowing and apologizing. Yet another low-profile black sedan sped up and stopped beside me. I looked over with some surprise. And there was Alexander. He should have arrived from the dinner party. Still wearing a very formal business suit. A steady and introverted man in a high position, but at this moment, his face was full of panic and nervousness. Until he saw me, Alexander obviously let out a huge sigh of relief. Anne. He walked to my side in big strides, grabbed my arm and looked me up and down several times. It was only then that he hid his emotions and asked in a warm voice, "Is everything okay?" I shook my head, a little ashamed. "It's fine, Brother Alexander. I was just standing here thinking about things and got lost in thought." I didn't expect that kind gentleman to call the police. "It's good that it's okay." Alexander didn't say much. "Go wait for me in the car first." I got into the car. Alexander went over to the police and said a few words before turning back to the car. "Alexander, if you are busy, I can go home by myself." "Not busy, I'll drive you back." He hadn't been drinking and drove himself here. We didn't talk much on the way. When we got to the bottom of my house, Alexander turned off the car, and, "Let's talk. It's true that we should talk about it." After all, the two of us had had that kind of relationship back in Los Angeles. I followed him out of the car and to the small garden. "Grandma called me today and told me that your parents are opening up for you to go on a blind date." I instantly felt bad about my mammary glands. I'm not getting married. Even if I'm single for the rest of my life, I'm not going to just marry someone like they think. Alexander suddenly touched the top of my hair. "I talked to Grandma." "What?" Alexander looked at me, his eyes ever calm and quiet. Like the light moon that envelopes the world at this time. It can embrace everything. "I want to marry you, Brother Alexander." Grandma agreed, and her old man was especially happy. No, this matter is not allowed." I stood up in a hurry. "Brother Alexander, you have a bright career and an unlimited future. You can't do it because of me." "Amanda." Alexander suddenly laughed. He smiled, and the corners of his eyes already had light lines. It was then that I suddenly woke up. Brother Alexander, already almost 32 years old. Over the years, in the news about him. In addition to the praise of his youthful vigor and promising future, no one has ever mentioned his relationship. No one has ever mentioned anything personal about his relationship. Even more so, never had any lace gossip rumors. Although he also has a big brother, has long been married and has children. But his delay in getting married was also a piece of Pai's family's heartache. "I'm glad you would say that. Brother Alexander?" I was a bit puzzled. "Anon, you're worried about my future off the top of your head." "And not really, I don't like you." Alexander gently took my hand, but in my opinion, that's exactly the only reason that could make me give up. "But Alexander, you really don't care about that part of my past." "Even if you don't care, what about your family?" I reddened my eyes and gently broke away from his hand. "Besides, I just made a decision tonight. I want to call the police. That guy sent me an anonymous letter and pictures the other day. Michael gave him $2 million and chose to let it go, but I still want to go to the police. If I go to the police, the old story will come out again. I know I'm not wrong, but people are afraid of me. I don't want to get you involved." Alexander's expression grew serious. "You said that guy was blackmailing you, but Michael gave him $2 million to settle the matter?" "Yes, I know he was thinking of me too. He was afraid that I wouldn't be able to hold out if he caused any more bad publicity. But I've thought long and hard about it, and I still want to go to the police. Why should I have to suffer day and night while the offender gets away with a large sum of money?" Alexander pulled me towards the car. "Go get those anonymous letters and photos, and we'll go to the police now." "I can go myself." "Amanda, did you know?" Alexander's eyes were deep, yet held a deep, unseen pain. "The thing I regret most in my life is that I wasn't able to be by your side after your accident back then. Every time I think about it, I even ridiculously wish I could dress back up to stop this from happening. Alexander, it's not your fault. Amanda, just let me stand by your side for once." Alexander closed his eyes and took a deep breath to calm his emotions. Gripping my hand tighter, "I know what I'm doing to myself. And I know what I'll be facing later. All of that won't be a problem as long as you trust me." Alexander took me to the police station to file a report. The man had just taken a payment from Michael. With a lead like that in place, I thought it would move forward quickly. Alexander took 2 days off and took me back home to see my grandmother. Grandma lovingly touched my face and admonished Alexander. "Since you're going to be with an N, think clearly, don't take it out and rehash old scores in the future." Alexander smiled a little helplessly. "Grandma, am I the one who rehashes old scores?" Grandma gave him a blank look. "No, you're not, you're just a vindictive person. You've been holding a grudge for 18 years for a few extra words that and said to another boy when she was a little girl." "Grandma." Alexander couldn't sit still. I'm going out for a smoke. This is the first time I've seen Alexander in a bit of a state. I couldn't help but laugh. Grandma, don't say anything about Alexander. He's very nice, very nice, very nice. Then do you like him? Grandma asked with a big smile. I lowered my head, lying on my grandmother's knee. My heart was both sour and sweet. I didn't know how to answer. And then, Grandma knows what you are thinking. The smile on the loving old man's face converged, and his eyes looked far away into the distance outside the door. When I was little, my favorite person was my sister-in-law. She was pretty, she could sing songs, her hair was dark and thick, and her braids were beautiful. All the young people in the village loved her. She was engaged to the handsomest man in the village. But the night before the wedding, the devils took her away. Grandma's voice began to tremble. In those days, I don't need to tell you what happened to her when the devils took her away. Later, the family tried to raise the money and asked for help to get her out. But she's already spoiled beyond recognition. Her fiancé backed out of the marriage, and everyone in the village is pointing fingers at her. Even her parents couldn't stand the pressure and began to resent her. Later, she threw herself into a pond in the middle of the night and died. Before she died, I went to see her once. She asked me, Nui, was I really wrong? Why is a woman's virginity more important than her life in their eyes? If you lose your virginity, you can only die? Grandma's cloudy eyes gradually filled with tears. And then, the world is like this. There are many injustices. Especially for us women. But you just have to remember that you're not wrong, and remember that you have to live a good life, a life that's better than anyone else's. Grandma patted me on the shoulder, live well with your head held high, and then, Grandma knows you can do it. And don't look at your brother Alexander, he's so powerful on the outside. But he's really just a stupid, dead-eyed kid. He's been in love with you for many, many years. And then, if you like him a little, give him a chance, okay? I promised my grandmother I'd be with Alexander. But the dust hasn't settled on the case yet. And then there's my parents. If they knew about Alexander and I, they might make a scene again. After all, although the Pei family is low-key, it's also really unattainable. Mom and Dad's vanity is strong, my brother, but also a do-nothing high-minded second generation. In case of using the Pei family's power to do something bad. Even if the Pei family does not care, but I also feel not allowed. So I decided to hide it from everyone for the time being. Only secretly shared with the best girlfriends. The best friend was silent for a long time and sent a huge, incredibly long voiceover. And then you and he married. I do not dare to go to your home to find you play, in the unit to face the leadership, go to your home to play but also to face the big leaders. Oh, I'm so stressed. I will not be able to laugh out of the way. And I really cannot think of you and your family pay Hall such and such a picture. After all, I just saw the day before yesterday on the TV news he made a report of the appearance of particularly serious and earnest. What is he like in private with you? Also so serious. Wouldn't you be so pitifully disciplined then? I was about to reply when Alexander pushed his way into the bedroom. He still smelled a little bit of alcohol, but he looked happy. How much have you had to drink? You smell like alcohol. I got up to meet him and wrinkled my nose. Alexander, however, wrapped his arms around me. My face was pressed against his jacket, the fabric was stiff and besides the smell of alcohol, it smelled like the laundry detergent I was used to. There was no messy aroma. I couldn't help but rub it gently. What's wrong? Something happy to share with me? Amanda, the guy was found. The police have contacted the local police station and are ready to make an arrest. Let's get married when this is all over. When Alexander said the last sentence, he held my face and kissed me. Somehow, the words that my girlfriend had just said popped into my head. I've seen Alexander on TV too. A newcomer to the political arena, springtime, but calm and solemn, with half a bit of frivolity missing. It's really hard to imagine that when he's with me in private, he's so gentle that it makes your heartstrings tremble. Brother Alexander. I murmured softly to him in between kisses. What's wrong, Anne? I just looked at him and didn't say anything. Nothing. I stood on my tiptoes and initiated the kiss. The piece of sourness in the bottom of my heart was suppressed. I didn't tell him that I actually think about the old days a lot these days. If that hadn't happened, wouldn't I have been water under the bridge with Alexander? After all, in my teenage years, the person I initially had a crush on was Alexander. Michael's call came at a bit of a bad time. Alexander just sent me up into the clouds. He's still not on it. The ringtone suddenly rang, startling us both. I wasn't going to answer it, but Michael didn't stop. Alexander had quite a bit of resentment on his face, but still tenderly lowered his head to kiss me. We'll continue this later, but you'll have to wait for me to join you. My cheeks flushed. How is this waiting? We'll try it a few more times, and we'll see. Alexander got up and brought his cell phone over and handed it to me. I thought about it, but pressed answer. There were some things that needed to be made clear. And I'm done with all of them. Really, I swear I'm not lying, I'm done with them all. Can we get back together? I looked at Alexander beside me. His looks are the kind I like, handsome and gentlemanly. His body was also my favorite, lean but with thin muscles. I suddenly remembered a picture of him that had been circulating online. It was just a full body shot in profile. He was wearing a white shirt, simple black suit pants, and a very plain belt, without any logo. The sleeves of his shirt were rolled up at the elbow, revealing a small, muscular arm. Screwed up to talk to someone, the profile of the side of the face cannot be picked out a little flaws. The waist is thin and the legs are long, the intention is to flow. Weibo quickly 10,000 turn, countless little girls in the following scream. I also secretly clicked the like. But now he was lying beside me. The flavor of lust hadn't completely faded from his face. His hand wrapped around my waist. The fingers were long and bony, and the skin at the ends of the fingers was slightly white and wrinkled. My face suddenly reddened. Michael's voice was still ringing in my ears. I suddenly felt quite annoyed. Michael, I'm sorry. I haven't had a chance to tell you yet, I've just had a conversation on my end, and I have to be responsible for people. There was instant silence on the other side of the receiver. It took half a minute for Michael's voice to ring out again. Amanda, who are you talking to? Who would talk to you? Besides me, what man can accept your past? The cell phone was suddenly taken by Alexander. His face was cold and angry. Michael, it's Alexander. I'm talking to Amanda, and we're going to get married in the near future. Amanda's past is nothing to be ashamed of. You're as dishonorable as a gutter rat if you keep PUAing her with her past. Leave her alone. Think about your company. Alexander hung up and blacked out. I wanted to say something. But Alexander had already pinned me down without a word. Alexander, are you angry? I asked very quietly. Wait for me later and I won't be mad. I hugged him and tilted my face up to respond to his kisses. Okay, I'll wait for you to join me. At the end, Alexander was very emotional. He kissed me deeply, but for the first time he said to me, Amanda, I like you. My whole body shuddered and my voice trembled even more. I like you too, brother Alexander. When the news of Michael's death came, I wasn't as surprised as I thought I would be. Because the incident before that had been enough to shatter my senses. The man was arrested by the police. He was caught in the middle of an interrogation. And then collapsed and confessed everything. It turned out that the accident back then was not a random act of the devil. It was a deliberate act. And the person behind it was Michael. A brooding teenager with a broken family and a bleak future. He would do anything to get the one he likes. He's a savior who falls from the sky. He saved a young girl who was almost broken. Became a godlike existence in her heart. Let her fall in love with him, rely on him, cannot leave him. But when he became famous, he hated her from the bottom of his heart. He loved her, but could not touch her. He loved her, but couldn't help hurting her again and again. It was just a private feeling that the person he once couldn't reach was no longer good enough for him. He started to look for young, clean girls all the time. But no matter how many he found, the gap in his heart still could not be filled. Eventually, he came to his senses, repented, and tried to mend the deep rift between them. But Amanda already had a new boyfriend. He had been frustrated for days and decided to do whatever it took to get her back again. Instead, the police fined him. It was like a second boot dropped. You should have gotten married a long time ago. And the day had finally arrived. Amanda knew about it all along, too, didn't she? What would she think? How would she spit on him? Michael's mind went blank. There was only one thought, screaming madly. There was no way he could face her. And the only way to escape completely, it seemed, was to die. So he excused himself to change his clothes. He leapt from the top floor of his luxury apartment. In the few seconds it took to fall, he saw Amanda in her white dance practice outfit. She was laughing and jumping as she ran out of the school gate. She jumped on the back of Alexander's bike. With an ice cream in one hand, she naturally wrapped her arms around Alexander's waist. The sound of her laugh was especially beautiful, like a silver bell. And he stood behind a dark fence with a bruise. Like a thief who spies on other people's happiness. Then one step wrong, step by step wrong. He ruined the pure and clean Amanda. But he also completely buried himself. Michael's eyes closed in the strong wind. The west wind could not stop him. At the end of the day, those who are good and love each other, they will still get their fulfillment. All he asked was to meet Amanda in his next life with a clean slate. End of story.